I'm so stoked to spend this evening with you all. We will be together for about the next 90 minutes and giving you a little bit of an overview. I'll talk some. There'll be some times when I'll ask you to chime in if you're willing to, but no requirement to do so. There will also be some times where I will invite you to shut off your Zoom screen and do some work on your worksheets or on your own paper. So it'll be a blend of opportunities for you to be involved. This Zoom workshop is something that I love sharing because it is something that Cecily and I have been cultivating and developing for over a decade, and it is rooted in our desire to live more intentionally, to live with the end in mind, pursue purpose and meaning in our own life. Tonight we have a lot of content. This is something that I typically spend 4 to 5 weeks going over with a client. So on an individual basis, we really do a deep dive. Tonight you are getting the 90-minute overview version. So I imagine there will be more work that you would want to do on your own after this session. And so I just share that up front. If this feels like we're speeding through this, we are, because I want you to get the big picture stuff, and so that you can then dive deeper on your own after tonight. So to start off tonight, I want you to take a look at this first slide, and I want you to think about the resolutions that you see on the screen. So this is from an actual research study that they did back in October, where they were interviewing people, asking them what New Year's resolutions they were setting. And I want you to drop into the chat which of these resolutions is one that you would also like to experience this year. So go ahead and take a look at this list. Drop in if it's one or two, that's great. Maybe it's all of them, that's awesome as well. Just curious where you would fall into this graphic here. So Cecily wants more time with family and friends. Ava, less time on social media. I like that. I imagine most people could do that. Drop in some pounds. I like it. Time with friends and family. Cool. Yeah, it seems like from the research, saving money and exercise, being healthier, we're pretty high up on the list for most people. And I wanted to share this as an introduction to our conversation because we are in the month of January. January is the time when people do set New Year's resolutions. And there's some good news and bad news about this graphic on the screen. And the good news is that all of these resolutions are meaningful. They're all worthwhile. They are all good things. And so that is good that we are setting those types of resolutions. But the bad news is that statistically they will fail. Based on research, research shows that 91% of New Year's resolutions fail, and 23% of the time that occurs in the first week. The big drop off is actually 2 weeks in. It's over 80% of people fail their New Year's resolutions within the first 2 weeks. Maybe some of you can relate to that. I don't know if any one of you have set a New Year's resolution, then have quickly seen it fall away, but that is the statistics. That is common. So what I want to share with you tonight is a method of approaching goal setting that I think will change the way you think about resolutions, will change the way you set goals. And I believe that because it's radically altered the way that I set goals, and that Cecily and I set our family and couple goals together. And the framework that I'm going to share with you tonight is called intentional change theory. So this is the framework that we use to set goals. It's what I teach my clients to do. And I have found this to be one way to elevate my goal setting practice. So on the screen, you will see the face of a man named Dr. Richard Boyatzis. Dr. Boyatzis, he's a professor at Case Western Reserve. He teaches in the organizational behavior program for their graduate programs. He is the author of over 200 scholarly articles. He's written numerous books as well throughout the course of his time as a professor. One of his books, Primal Leadership, is something you may be familiar with. It has sold over 5 million copies, has been reproduced in 28 different languages around the world. And so he's one of the rare academics who has a research foundation, but also produces pop information for the consumer market. And so he's able to take these high level concepts, put the cookies on the bottom shelf for the rest of us normal people, and hopefully elevate us in the process. I came across this work and I discovered his research as I was doing my own research for my master's thesis. And I've been applying this content to my life and to our life ever since. So for the last 10 years or so. Now, the research that Dr. Boyatzis did was conducted over the course of 5 decades. He still teaches, still does research, and his research was specifically in helping or understanding how people make sustainable change in their life. So, using the New Year's resolutions for an example, if 80% or so fail within the first couple weeks or first month, what about the other 20%? What about the people who actually achieved those goals? What were they doing? How were they successful? And so in his research, he has crafted what you see before you, intentional change theory. Um, the 5 components of intentional change theory are this. First component is to envision the ideal. The second is to measure the real. The third is to make an agenda for change. The fourth is to practice it. It's to put it into action. It's to actually do the work. And then something that's interesting that came out in Dr. Boyatzis' research is that community was critical to each element of the process. So everything from dreaming and envisioning the ideal all the way up to putting the work into practice. What he found is that if you want to be successful and create the change or accomplish the goals that you have set, it needs to be rooted in community. Now, he found that if people follow this framework, they are more likely to achieve their goals, and this change is sustainable, meaning they accomplish it and hang on to those goals and that new change or new success for a long period of time. Now, an example that I like to use when I teach this is using Google Maps. I'm sure you all have used Google Maps or some sort of map tool at some point in your life. And the use of Google Maps is a great simple example of how we use intentional change theory on a day-to-day basis. So if you want to go somewhere, step one is to envision the ideal. You have to choose a destination. You have to dream up, where am I going, right? Step two is to measure the real. You have to identify where you are at now. You have to figure out your current location. Step three is building the route. If you click start on Google Maps, it tells you the steps to get there or may give you that little blue line to follow. And then step four is you actually have to do it. You can't sit in your car and say, oh, that's great. I see that blue line. That doesn't get you there. You actually have to put it into practice. Along the way, you are likely to, hit stoplights or there may be road closures. And so you might have to turn or alter your course. That is all part of step four, which is actually engaging with your plan. It's doing it. And community plays a role even in this process. So you have to talk about the destination with your spouse, your partner, or your family, and you might have kids in the car who are engaged in this process, and there are other drivers on the road. So this is just a simple example to take intentional change theory and apply it to this one element. So we might be doing this in life. You might already be doing this, but maybe it's not as intentional as it could be. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about how to take this academic concept and apply it to goal setting to help you achieve those goals. So just to recap, intentional change theory is this broad framework. It's used to make sustainable change in corporations, leadership teams, all different sorts of organizations, but also individuals. And tonight we are going to be applying that specifically to your goals and your life. So let me give you a bit of a roadmap for our time together this evening. Tonight we're going to be talking through these 5 elements of goal setting. So what you see before you is what I do for my own goals. It's what I teach my clients to do. So 5 different things we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the circle. I'll explain that in a moment. We're going to look at the wheel of life. We're going to look into your core values. We're going to set a 10-year vision. And then from that, we will talk about setting goals. Now, what we're doing here tonight is we're taking intentional change theory, this academic research-backed method for creating sustainable change, and we're laying it on top of goal setting. So what you'll see is that the first 4 components of this goal setting practice, these are envisioning the ideal practices. They help us clarify what we want. The second and fifth component are tools to measure the real, to kind of see what the reality is. The fifth is building the plan. And when you leave here tonight, you'll put this into action. You will take action on the plan. Now, all this is being done in community. We are here together. I'm with you. The Zoom folks here are part of that community. But also, I hope that these conversations are things that you take from here and go forth over the next coming weeks with. All right. So let's dive in together. If you have your digital worksheets, you can go ahead and pull those up, or you can grab a piece of paper if you have a paper and pen. The first step to our practice tonight is the circle. So this activity is where we start. The circle is the beginning of our practice. And so if you have the circle, if we can get the circle slide up on our screen here, give me 1 second. All right. So what you'll see before you is a simple tool that I use to get us brainstorming. So if you have your digital worksheet, or if you have a piece of paper and a pen, I want you to draw just a big circle. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes to start writing things that you want in your life in the center of the circle. This could be big picture things. It could be things like debt freedom, or it could be financial peace, or it could be very specific things. If there is a piece of fitness equipment that you really want, you want to get that new barbell, or maybe you want to add an animal to your farm. You want to get a new goat. Maybe there's something very specific that you want to add inside your circle. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to just start jotting down some things in your life. And then I'm going to pop in and ask you to share if you're willing in just a moment. So I'll give you 2 moments. We'll get the music going, and we'll pause for just a second. All right. I'm going to interrupt your writing and thinking, and I'm wondering if anyone is willing to share. You can come off mute and share something that you want in your life. What did you put inside your circle?
I'm happy to share.
Hey Ted, yeah, dive
How's
in.
it going? So debt freedom was one thing. Should I list a few things?
Yeah, give us a couple. I love it.
Sure. So new home, security on my career path, which I'm in the midst of like a midlife reset. Um, a nice ski vacation for the kids and the family. And one thing that has nothing to do with like career or life or like silly steps like that, but the ability to produce content freely, because one of the things that I feel like I hold on to is some of my inner like most vulnerable thoughts. So for me, one of the things that's happening is this kind of unfolding or unraveling, and I want to be able to share some of that vulnerability more freely.
Cool. Cool. Thanks for sharing. I love that. Someone else willing to share some of the things that you wrote inside your circle tonight.
I
Hey,
can go. Oh, go
oh,
ahead, Brandon.
sorry. Thank you. A couple things that I am hoping to kind of establish some goals I have are getting a more healthy, regular sleep schedule. And I also have a goal to complete a marathon this year. So I'd like to train and really get the framework down for that to make that a reality.
Awesome. Awesome. Great having you here, Brandon.
Thanks,
Ava, I
Chris.
think you were diving in.
Oh, sure. Okay, so I put in mind, I want to be more organized, um, more intentionality, and have more discipline in 2024.
Awesome. I love that. And I know you are already a disciplined person, so I'm excited to see what a more disciplined Ava looks like. That sounds exciting. All right, someone else, anyone else willing to share?
I got a couple. I have the same one. I would like to run a marathon this year as well. Um, I'm not looking forward to that, but I think because it's written down, I got to do it. Um, some other things. I have vacationing 30 days in 2024. I feel like I get really sucked into working all the time. So I think giving myself some sort of goal of days away is a good thing for me. Um, and then I this is something that's at like a future piece, but I would also like to at some point this year and into the future, I'd like to look into buying property for our gym space.
Cool.
And I think that that probably needs to be on the radar now.
Super cool. I love that. Thanks for sharing. Well, thank you all for sharing that. And I think one of the important parts of this practice is this communal sharing, right? Because we get to hear what people are thinking about. And what I always experience when others share is excitement for my own goals. Being in a group of people who are motivated and pursuing things gets me fired up as well. All right, now the next step in the practice is to start to look outside the circle. So you will see on your screen this outside of the circle content that says what you don't want, basically, in your life. And what we do here is we're trying to hack the science of motivation a little bit. So what research has shown is that having carrots, things that we're chasing or kind of pulling us forward, is important. But what research reveals is that it's also important to recognize that when we don't pursue what we want to do, that there are consequences. Right? So there are consequences to inaction. And it's important to capture those and recognize that if I don't pursue what I know I want and should pursue, that there will be things that play out in my life that I don't want. And it can be helpful to find the motivation to do the things you want to do by considering what happens if you don't do them. So I want to give you another minute to jot down some things outside of the circle that you don't want in your life. All right. So I'll give you 1 minute and jot down anything that you don't want. All right. I'll interrupt again, and I'll share something that I don't want. Well, a couple things. I don't want debt. That's something that Cecily and I committed to long ago. I also don't want wasted time. I waste more time than I would like to, and so that's something that I don't want in my life. Is someone else willing to share something that you don't want?
Sure. I don't want more debt as well, but also procrastination and ill health, war, injury. I don't want any less bikes than I already have. I just want more bikes.
I love it.
That's good.
That's great. Thanks, Ted. Someone else, something that you don't want.
I can share. My first one was having a feeling of regret, like I never did something that I've wanted to do. Feeling unfulfilled kind of goes along the same lines, I guess, as like not maybe pursuing something that I wanted to pursue. And then the last one I said was jealousy. So like rather than feeling jealous, people just being more envious and looking up to, you know, people around me and looking up to their achievements rather than thinking that I'm not as good or something along those lines.
That's good. Thanks, Jack. Good. All right, one more person, someone else, something you don't want.
So I don't want phone addiction. This is something that's hard because I'm in sales and I use my phone all the time and I can justify it even after hours. So
Yep.
that's something that I'm working on now.
Yep. Thanks for sharing, Jonathan. Cool. All right. So this is the end of kind of step one of our goal setting practice. We have clarified some things that you want in your life and clarified some things that you don't want in your life. The next step of the practice is examining the wheel of life. The wheel of life is an ancient concept. It's not something that I came up with. There are a lot of different versions of this, but the concept is that we are interconnected beings, right? I'm not just a son. I'm not just a husband, but I'm interconnected. I am a variety of different things. And the wheel of life depicts a variety of different elements in our life that make up our totality. And what I would suggest is that if you're doing great in several areas, but you're doing really poorly in one area, that can negatively impact your entire life. It's like getting a flat tire. If you've ever had a flat tire, usually those are caused by just a little hole from a nail or something that you drove over on the road. So it's not that your whole tire is deformed. It's usually just one little part of the tire. And I've found that to be true in life as well, that finding balance is where we find most peace and most joy and contentedness and success. So what I want to do with you now is I want to challenge you to look at these incremental elements of the circle and consider what success looks like to you in each of these areas. So it's important to clarify because success in physical health for one person might be the ability to run a marathon, but that might not be of interest to someone else. So physical health for someone else might be the strength to pick up a grandchild, right? So on the screen, you will see a variety of different possible things that could fall into these 8 different areas of life. And what I want you to do is I want you to take a few moments. I'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes to do this. On our next screen, you'll see a slide with several blanks. And I want you to come up with maybe one or two different definitions of what living well would look like in this particular area of life. Now, if we had more time together, we would do a deep dive into each of these, and I would encourage you to do that on your own. But for today, just see if you can come up with one or two little bullet points for each of these 8 areas of life. We'll bring the previous slide up just so you have some inspiration, and I'll give you about 3 minutes or so to start to jot things down in these categories, and then we'll share again. So I'll give you about 3 minutes. I'm going to read some of the categories just in case you can't see them. Categories: mind and intellect, physical health, work and career, primary relationships, finances, spirituality, recreation, personal, social. Those are the different areas that you are writing down what success looks like to you. Right. I'm curious if anyone's willing to share something they wrote down in let's pick a couple of these. Let's do physical health. Who wrote down something in physical health? What does success look like to you in that area?
I'll share again. 5 to 7 times a week of running, cycling, yoga, plyometrics, and then for me to be able to run a 100-miler.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks, Ted. Someone else, physical health. Anyone else have anything different than that?
I want to be able to do 2 pull-ups.
Awesome. I love it. That's a great goal. All right, let's jump to work and career. Who wrote something in work and career? What would you say would be living well in your work and career?
I put down apply for, be invited for some sort of mentorship program or seminar staff or speaking engagement.
Awesome. Super cool. Thanks for sharing. All right. So we are going to move on to the next element of the wheel of life. Hopefully you were able to jot down 1 or 2 bullet points for each area. Again, I would encourage you to go back and build this out even more intricately. But the next step in this process is what I call basically a personal assessment. I want you to look at your various areas that you filled in and give yourself a grade. How are you doing today in that area? If that is your ideal, are you meeting that ideal? Are you running the number of times you want to run? Are you doing the work that you want to do in your job? Do you have the relationships that you desire? Are you an A plus, or would you say, nah, it's going okay, but I'm kind of a B minus. I've got room for growth. Or maybe there are areas in your life, maybe it's your spirituality or your finances, maybe you're not doing so great in those areas, and so you're giving yourself a D or D minus. And the purpose of this is just an honest assessment. It's an opportunity to be honest with yourself, and when you do that, you are able then to guide your goals and focus in on the things that you want to specifically and intentionally improve. So I'm going to give you a moment, just about a minute, maybe 90 seconds or so, to run through, give yourself a grade, and then I'm going to ask for someone to share their highest grade, what area they gave themselves their highest grade, and I want to hear from some people some areas where you gave yourself a low grade. Right? So I'll give you about a minute. All right, let me interrupt your thinking. I want to hear from some people. What are some areas that you gave yourself a high grade in? Who's willing to share?
I'll go. I just want to say this whole exercise looks a lot like my high school report card. It's all like B minuses and C's, but my highest grade would be physical health, and that's a B minus.
Great. Someone else.
I share again. My highest grade is A minus with my kids.
Cool.
I mean,
Cool. That's great.
they think it's an A plus, but I think it's an A minus. No, I'm just kidding.
I love it. They're at that age. Wait until they're like 15, right? Then they'll
Right.
give you a D.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Cool. Someone else. A high grade.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Well, I think my highest grade is in relationships with family and friends, and I have recently pushed myself. I had a ladies luncheon today at my house from ladies from our church. So I'm pushing myself to do those things. I think that's important for me to do, and I think that's good for me to do. However, you talked about like a hole in your tire causes you problems with the whole tire. And and I know that my health, I do not take care of my health. It's so I have a D for my health, and I realize that I cannot accomplish relationships if my health goes down. So therefore, I have to take care of my health in order to improve and carry on in supporting relationships. So I see those as counteracting each other, in a sense.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing. All right, someone else. What did you give yourself a low grade in? Someone else who gave themselves a low grade in a certain area.
I was gonna speak. I don't know if you can see me. I'm on my phone and it's all
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
okay. I'm trying to put my camera. Anyways, I was gonna speak on something I gave myself a high grade on, and then you. It's okay. Spirituality, I gave myself a B, and on finances, I gave myself a C minus.
Okay.
So slow progress, but a priority for accelerating that process on finances.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. One other person, I'm curious, another low grade, someone else who gave themselves a low grade in a specific area.
I'll go. I hear you, Jess. That was Jess in the background. Not in the background while she was talking. I put on social a C for myself. Like when there's the personal and there's the social. I feel like when we talk about that, that's like social events. And I'm like an anti-social person. So I gave myself a C on that.
Totally. Thanks for sharing, Colton.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, this is it's just one assessment, right? It's one tool to examine where we are at. This is measuring the real, as we mentioned earlier from intentional change theory. All right, the next step in our goal setting practice is to clarify our values. And tonight we're going to spend just a moment looking at what are called terminal values. And terminal values is a term that comes from a study that was conducted on Americans called the Values Arrangement List. And so some researchers spent years researching and studying what matters most to people, and they categorize them into the terms that you see on the screen. And so what I want you to do is I read through this list. I want you to start to select some of these terms that stand out to you. If we had more time together, we would talk about where our values come from. And I always say that this is not just it's not me just telling you what your values are tonight. You showed up with values. They're things that matter to you. And so our practice is simply to clarify those and bring them to the top of your mind so that when we think about setting goals, we're able to make value-based decisions. We're setting goals based on these values. So the list you see in front of you, 21 different terms that came from the longitudinal study called the Values Arrangement List. And I'll share these with you. And as I'm reading them, I just want you to circle any words that stand out to you. So anything that you hear and you say, yeah, I think that makes sense for me. So achievement, adventure, aesthetics, community, equality, fame, family, freedom, fellowship, happiness, health, love, nature, peace, pleasure, power, self-worth, social service, spirituality, wealth, and wisdom. Those are the 21 words from the study. Now, you might have a different term for something that you value, and that's fine. These were just categorical. But what I want you to do is, as you're thinking through these, I'm curious if you can hone in on your top three of this list. What would you say are the three things that guide your life the most? The three things that you hold in highest regard. Doesn't mean that the others don't matter, but uh, but what hierarchy exists here? What are the things that you usually make your decisions based on? So I'm curious if anyone can share, if anyone has honed in their three. What would you say your three highest values are?
I'd be happy to share.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, I would say my number one would just be health. I just feel like it's kind of a top-down value in my life. If I'm not healthy, I'm not, um, you know, doing well in other areas in most scenarios. And then family, I work in my family business. So it's something that if those relationships aren't strong, it's not just me that fails, it's everyone that fails.
Yep.
And then I would say freedom as well. And freedom with time and freedom with just, with time is kind of the big thing. So yeah.
Cool. Great. Thanks for sharing. Let's see if we can hear from someone else. Your top three.
I'll share if you can hear me. Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So for me, aesthetics is a big one that bleeds over into creativity, but also my space reflects back to me my sense of internal state. And so I've recognized that even though that feels really luxurious and superfluous, aesthetics is huge. Community, and that includes family, and then health.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Jordan. And that reminds me of something that I usually like to point out, that we often have, or at times we have judgments surrounding certain terms. And I always encourage people to release those judgments, because often people look at wealth or fame or maybe aesthetics, and there are that we may have some judgments about those terms, but how you live into that value can be very different, right? And it can be a very meaningful value or something that is maybe less meaningful. So thanks for acknowledging that and pointing that out. All right, so I asked you to come up with your top three values. I always encourage my clients to memorize these, to post these on your wall. If you come over to our house, you would see Cecily and I have our shared values posted on our wall. These are the things that guide us. And I always say, not on the tip of your tongue. If you can't instantly state to someone what your values are, you're not a terrible person. You're just not leveraging to the extent that you can and should. Because ultimately, our values should be part of what guides us towards the future. Now, you might be thinking, I thought we were talking about goal setting. You're talking about values. Where are we going with this? So I want to explain using this little analogy. I've been a fitness instructor. I was a CrossFit coach for years, and I love thinking about fitness. So I'm going to use this little analogy to describe why we're doing what we're doing. So imagine for a second, if you wanted to get really strong and build big muscles, you would train accordingly to doing that. You would lift heavy weights, you'd eat lots of protein. But if you wanted to be lean and run long distances, you would probably train with cardio, and maybe you wouldn't eat as much, and maybe you would fuel differently, maybe some higher carbs before races. So the goal, the value, or the ideal determines the path. And if you don't do that in order, if we go to the next slide, you'll see that it might impact how this plays out. If you want to get big and strong, but you are running a lot, that might not result in what you want. Or if you want to run a lot, but you're lifting really heavy weights, that is not good either. So your desired outcome, what you hope to achieve, should dictate the way you train. And the same is true for our goal setting practice at large. Your values and your vision, those are the desired outcome, right? That's what we're looking for. That's what you want to accomplish. And so the goals are the training method. The goals are what take you from where you're at to where you want to be. Right. So that's how these things are interconnected here. So next slide, we're going to talk about this, the next step in the process. This is establishing a 10-year vision. This is maybe one of the most important things we'll talk about today. This is the time that you get to be excited about thinking about the future, thinking about 10 years from today. So the way we're going to do this is I have a prompt, and I want you to take some time on your own screen or on your own paper. I'm actually going to give you about 7 minutes. I'm going to shut our screens off, and if we can go to the prompt slide, I'll walk you through these questions. And what I want you to do is I want you to just start writing a narrative about what 10 years from today looks like. And the way I want you to frame this is by using this introductory phrase. You'll see it on the screen. It says, today is, so I want you to write, today is January 11th, 2034. And then the phrase, I am, for me, I would be 48 years old. So today is January 11th, 2034, and I am, for me, 48 years old. So that's how I want you to introduce this narrative that you're writing. Then as you're writing, you can literally answer these questions in your writing as you respond to this, or you can do bullet points, or you can do narratives. But the idea is that you are writing a story. You are painting the picture for what a decade from now looks like. All right. So I'm going to give you about 6 or 7 minutes. You can shut your screen off, and I just want you to write. And then I'm going to ask if someone would be willing to share their vision when we come back together in about 6 minutes. All right. So we will see you in a few moments. All right, 2-minute warning, everyone. 2 minutes from now, we will come back together. All right, everyone. If I can welcome you back to the Zoom room, I would love to take some time to hear a little bit about your vision. So I asked you to think about 10 years from now, to think about these questions to prompt your responses, and think about what your ideal would be a decade from now. And I'm also curious, I don't know if anyone had this experience like I had, but every time I do this, I think, oh my gosh, 10 years from now, I'm going to be 48. That hits me. It just seems like so much older than 38. Did anyone else have that experience of like, oh my gosh, 10 years from now, right? All right, who's willing to share? Would someone be willing to read their vision or what they wrote down for 10 years from now?
Happy to share if anybody, unless anybody else wants to.
Go for it, Ted. That'd be great.
So I've kind of like wrote down the questions really quick and just sort of answered them quick.
Love it.
So where do you live? I put Leadville, Colorado, but it could also be like pretty much any mountain town, maybe Park City, Deer Valley. But who's there with me? Entire family: Lauren, Madison, Liam. Where does your fulfillment come from? Spending time with them, plus adventuring through the mountains. What are your rest and activity patterns? I mean, sleep, activity, adventure. So it's basically my DNA.
I love it.
How do you eat and drink and care for yourself? Again, not to spend time on that, but that's my DNA, to like stay healthy, stay hydrated. Caring for myself for me is meditation, pushing myself out on the trails, and then obviously coming back and spending time with my kids and spending time with my family. Like, all those things feed me. Community feeds me too. So building community there is really important for me. And that I've learned here, living here for a year. It's much different than living in Malibu. How do I spend my time and money? Spend time getting the kids off to school, writing, producing content, training, spending time with Lauren, my family. How do I fill my day with meaning? So to me, the best thing that I believe I can do is live the best version of myself, which is continually peeling the never-ending onion peel, as I always call it, the never-ending onion peel of life, whatever that brings, and then being that example. So pushing myself in a way, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and then being that example and sharing with others, and being the person who's just one half step ahead to say, I can help you because I've had this experience before. So, from the 12 steps, sharing my experience, strength, and hope, right? Let's see. How do you pursue education, training, and challenge? So the training and the challenge, I think I already talked about. Pursue education. It's interesting. Now I'm at the point, you're such a little young baby, Dusty. So I'm 53, I'll be 63 in 10 years from now. And
Awesome.
so while that feels far, I just watched my friend on a podcast who's 65 and he's crushing pull-ups on a regular basis. So the whole idea of like being old is like, I'm so excited about finding out how I'm going to be, who I'm going to be. I'm so excited about it because it's indefinable at the moment.
Yep.
But as far as the education, so the education I put like avalanche volunteer. I've always had this huge desire to like be like a firefighting volunteer, or like if I'm in the mountains to be search and rescue volunteer. I've always wanted to do that. So I will absolutely be doing that in 10 years from now. So education from the mountains. Also, I put gurus. So that's a very general term, but spiritual people who I feel like are a step ahead of me on the path. So I'll find some education from there. How would I give back to the community? Helping around town. And then, as you know, the trips that I lead, we go to different places and we'll spend time in orphanages and all kinds of different things around the world. Not to take too much time, but let's see. So cultivate intimacy and trust in a relationship. That's about communication. And I think slowing down, I think having 2 little kids is a lot, and then moving and changing careers and all this sort of stuff kind of gets lost. So the way I envision it 10 years from now is things have slowed down a bit, become a bit more simple, and spending some of that kind of just time honored quality time and presence. That's a big deal. Already touched on the who you learn from. What am I most proud of? Really, my kids, my wife, my health, my endurance, and my career. What am I most looking forward to each and every day?
Great. Thanks, Ted. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Would someone else be willing to share some of the thoughts that they wrote down for their 10-year vision?
I will go.
There you go, Colby.
Thanks, Colby.
I kind of made mine like a little bit of like a story instead of doing questions. I was looking through the questions and then kind of just like picking some and putting them into a story. And so today is January 11th, 2034, and I'm 41 years old, which actually kind of gives me the goosebumps. Ted, it blows my mind that you're going to be in your 60s. That like in Dusty in 10 years, you're going to be almost 50. That is mind blowing to me. And I definitely know about this. I know you're talking about Tony on the Tosh.0 podcast because I watched it too and it made me smile. I'm 41 years old. I'm living with my wife and kids in Ventura, California. I own and run a gym in Oxnard or Ventura where I pour into my full-time staff so they can live fulfilling lives, pouring into our community. I train 3 to 4 days a week in our space and get outside and play new sports regularly. My days are now cut off at 6 hours with work. And I only coach a few clients personally each week. Continue to have a mentor and a coach to guide me through business decisions, and also have a life coach that helps guide personal, financial, and relational decisions. I refuel myself by spending quiet time with my family and cultivate trust and intimacy in my partner by committing to weekly dates and monthly budget meetings. I'm looking forward to helping my kids grow into the future.
I love it.
So
that's incredible. Thanks, Colby. Thanks for sharing. Well, thank you both for sharing, Ted and Colby. And I think you captured what we're trying to do here. The vision is the ideal future. And I want to share that I've been doing this over 10 years now. I've been writing vision statements for over 10 years. And I recently came across the one that I had written 10 years ago. And it was so wild to pull this out of my drawer. It was like in the bottom of one of my drawers when we were moving. And I started reading through this, and it was just wild to see what I thought I would be doing in 10 years and how much of that I had accomplished but how I had accomplished it way quicker than I expected. And so I encourage you to hang on to this vision, but also make this a regular practice. I write a vision 2 to 3, maybe 4 times a year. And it's not drastically different, but there might be some elements that shift each and every time I do it. Now, if you remember back to earlier in our conversation, I was sharing kind of the idea of the Google Maps and GPS. Well, a vision is the destination, right? That's what we're working towards. And ideally, this vision is built off of your values, right? That it's not some random idea or something you think looks really cool on the internet, but it's actually based on what's within your intrinsic values, the things that matter most to you at your core. So this is all the work that we've done proceeding up to the point of goal setting. And so now we actually get to set goals. And I always think that it's important to note that we've spent an hour together and we have not yet set any goals. And I think that is important because great goals are set by exploring your ideals, by exploring your vision, by exploring your values. That's what makes goals matter the most. We're not just flipping through magazines and picking out photos and saying like, oh, that car looks cool, yeah, I want that, or oh yeah, that house looks amazing, I want that. Instead, we have put in the work over the last hour, challenging you to think about what matters most and what will bring you most joy and contentedness, and what would be of highest value to you. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to turn your vision into goals. So what you'll see on the screen is the wheel of life. And so what I want to challenge you to do next is to start to think about setting goals in all 8 areas of the wheel of life. But again, these aren't necessarily like random things we're coming up with. What I want you to do is I want you to look at the vision that you wrote and see where that vision, what elements of that vision fit into these categories. So for example, if you came up with a vision of waking up and having coffee with your wife and going for a trail run and then riding a motorcycle to the company that you own, all of those things could be slotted into the wheel, right? So having a wife that you want to wake up next to, that would be a 10-year primary relationship goal, right? A trail run, that would be a physical health goal, being able to go for a trail run. Riding a motorcycle, that could fall into recreation, right? Owning your own company, that would be work and career. So the idea is that when we set goals, we're not just randomly thinking of like, oh, what do I want to do this year? But instead, you're using your vision as the guide. You're using the vision as the ultimate destination. And then we're able to work backwards, right? We're looking at what we want from 10 years and then thinking what we need to do to get there. We use 10 years as the timeline because it's long enough and far enough away to dream a little bit, but it's still within the realm of being able to conceptualize. It's really hard for me to think about what life will be like when I'm 90, but I can kind of think about what life will be like when I'm 48. So that's why we use 10 years. But one last thing before we get into the actual goal setting process, I want to explain a couple important formatting tips for what I think make really successful goals. So you've probably heard the acronym SMART before when you think about goal setting. I have added a few letters to this as well. So what you see before you is what we call SMART Paul goals. So first of all, goals should be specific. They should be as detailed as you can make them. They need to be measurable, meaning you need to be able to know when they're done. Right? So rather than saying, I run more this year, we need to know how much more are you going to run? Miles, days, something that is measurable. They need to be achievable, meaning it has to be within the realm of possibility. Some of you know that I serve in the Army right now. A few years ago, I was looking at joining and I looked into joining the Marines, but the age cutoff for joining the Marines is 29 years old. I was too old to join the Marines. So even if I wanted to be a Marine, it was not achievable. So your goals do need to be technically possible. They also need to be relevant, which means that they need to align with your vision, with your values, the thing that matter most to you. Not what your mom wants you to do, not what your boyfriend wants you to do, not what your spouse wants you to do necessarily, but instead they're relevant to you and maybe your loved ones as you're crafting these together. They also need to be time oriented, meaning there needs to be a date that you are doing them by or accomplishing them by. That's one way of making them more achievable. The next three letters that I've added are present, and that's the P. And what that means is it's just hacking psychology. Rather than saying I will run a marathon, it's saying I run a marathon. It's speaking it into existence, right? It's using present tense language. The second is approach. So it's what you will do, not what you will avoid. So instead of saying I don't eat donuts this month, what do you do instead of eating donuts? Maybe it's I will eat an extra portion of fruits and vegetables every meal, right? So approach versus avoidance. The last one is written. This might be one of the most important elements, that your goals need to be written down and they need to be posted. They need to be visible for at least you to see and maybe for others to see as well. So that is our framework for setting goals. So now we are actually going to go into the goal setting process. So on the next slide, you will see a variety of spaces for you to start writing goals. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about 7 minutes to start writing down some goals. And the idea again is you're looking at your vision, you're saying that's 10 years out. So elements of your vision need to go into this 10-year goal segment. So if you have, Ted talked about living in Leadville, that would be a 10-year goal. So that might fit into your there may be a financial element to that, right? You may need to have enough money to buy the house in Leadville 10 years from now, right? So you're taking 10 years and then you're working backwards. You're saying, okay, if I need $1 million to buy a house in Leadville or whatever it is, 500,000, whatever, what do I need 3 years from now? Maybe I need enough for a down payment, right? What do I need this year? What is 1 year out? All right, so I'm going to give you about 7 minutes to utilize the slides in your digital workbook. There are spaces for all 8 areas of life. I want to see if you can write some specific, some SMART Paul goals for each of these areas of life. See if you can fill out one goal for each of the area of life. All right, I'll give you about 7 minutes and then we'll reconnect for our last few moments together. Go. 1 minute warning. We'll come back together in 1 minute. All right, everyone. Welcome back to our Zoom room. Hopefully you were able to begin to jot down a few goals. Again, this is kind of a quick overview of our process. So I encourage you to continue cultivating these and working on them over time, and also to make this a regular practice. And I want to share with you some data that I came across in a book that I read recently, and it's talking about why what we're doing tonight is important. So what this research reveals is that when you write down your goals, you're 39% more likely to achieve them. So you're already making huge steps on not being a typical New Year's resolution, right? But the research also shows that if you write it and share it, you are 76% more likely to achieve that. So I encourage you to not only write out your goals, post them where you can see them, maybe where others can see them. And they can ask you about your goals. They can check in. They can provide some accountability, and also share and ask other people about their goals as well. I think this should be a communal process. Just a quick recap on intentional change theory. This is where we started the night. And as I mentioned, intentional change theory was based in helping people make sustainable change in their life, right? And what we've done tonight is we've taken intentional change theory and overlapped it with goal setting to help us set better goals. So in your digital workbook, you will have a slide where you can kind of run a goal through the intentional change theory framework. And I just want to talk you through how this could look. And it's just an example to see how these things could overlap. So imagine for a second that I had a goal to publish a book this year. That would be the ideal. I'm envisioning that this year I want to publish a book. Now, the measuring the real, the reality might be I have 10 of the 12 chapters written. That's where I'm at today. So step 3, making the agenda for change. That might include finishing the next 2 chapters over the next 2 or 3 months, and then sometime this summer, contacting a publisher. And then step 4 would be putting that into action. It would be the practices of writing, or a certain number of times a day that I want to be writing, right? And then throughout this process, I'm discerning with my community. I'm having them read chapters of the book. I am seeking out best practices from other authors. So it's just a simple example to see how a goal, such as publishing a book, can fit into the intentional change theory framework. Right. So what I want to do now is I would like to ask you to share one of your goals in the chat. As we close out tonight, I want you to drop something into the chat, a 1-year goal, or maybe a 3 to 5 year goal, or something that you're working on for 10 years from now, so that we can all be encouraged by the goals that you are setting, maybe be motivated by what you are working on. So go ahead and drop into the chat something that you are intending to do either this year or within the next few years, or in the coming decades. So what are some of the goals that you set? See those. Oh, great. My wife wants to max out a Roth IRA. I like that. Brandon, eliminate $10,000 of debt. I love it. Did I see a sub 5-minute mile? That's incredible. Ironman World Championship, pay off debt, get a master's, read 5 books this year. Awesome. Residency in 2 years. Super cool. Great. Write a novel. I love it. Super cool. All right. Tonight, we have been talking about intentional goal setting. I hope that you have picked up some tools, maybe learned some new information, things that will help you be even better at setting goals. We also have other things in store. If you want to continue some of the work that we are doing, or if you want to continue your own growth and development, I want to share with you a couple things that Cecily and I are leading. This coming month, we are actually hosting an in-person marriage seminar. If you are local and want to spend a couple hours with Cecily and I talking about marriage, we'll be leading a Gottman 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work seminar on February 4th, and you can find out more details on our website. We will also be doing a 4-week small group financial coaching workshop over Zoom as well in the month of February. So that will run throughout the month of February. So you can find more details about both of those things on our website. Or if you would like to talk specifically with me about your goals, if you want to go deeper into coaching, you can use the link on the screen or the icon on the screen to set up a 15-minute discovery call. I do discovery calls with clients, anyone who's interested in talking more about what coaching could look like. I'd love to chat with you if that is one of your interests. That's where we will close out tonight. I'm going to hang on Zoom for a while. So if you want to hang around and chat for a little bit, I'd love to do that. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. It was great to see you. I hope this has been beneficial. We'll send a little follow-up to get your feedback and review of your experience. So that would be helpful if you would share some of your thoughts with us, how we can make this even better. So thanks so much for being here. And I'll hang around to chat if anyone wants to talk for a bit.